Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Cranked and Ranked and the second part of our two-part Faith No More album ranking. This is a band that you can kind of go off on tangents talking about. There's a lot to talk about, and on top of that, this is one of our favorite bands. So we decided to split this shit up over two episodes. And last episode, if you didn't listen, was our number 7 through our number 4, and today we're talking about the top 3. As always, I'm Steven from Old Head, if you know that, and with me as always is Eddie Sparxx. Say hello, sir. Hey.
What's up?
Let's not beat around the bush here, because who knows how much we can milk these 3 albums, because I have a feeling we'll have a lot to say. So let's just get started as usual. And Eddie, you start off with your number 3 and your top 3 Faith No More albums.
Okay, so number 3, this section of my list was the hardest of all of the parts of my lists to place an album, because putting the 2 albums at 3 and 4, either of them above one another, was extremely difficult for me. Mm-hmm. I would have them joint third, but we're cranking them and ranking them, so I can't. I can't.
We
do
got
joints.
Rules here.
We have rules. we can't go against the grain on this one. So I've had to go for King for a Day. For a Lifetime.
All right. I like this because I believe that was my number 4. So it's almost like this is a continuation of the conversation about King for a Day. So let's do it.
Totally. Now, if you'd have talked to 14-year-old me and told me that this album would be my number 3, he'd tell you, you're fucking crazy. You're talking out of your ass. But, like, this album is quite possibly the biggest grower record I have ever had in my life. This album has grown on me to the point where it was like the first album where they kind of got away from their iconic sound to my 3rd favorite album in their catalog. And, the change in production and the sparseness of keyboards on this record made it hard for me to get into initially, but like I say, it really, really grew on me over time, because the quality of the musicianship is still 100% there. And with that said, I'm going to jump into the track by track. So, cool. We've got Get Out, which is an awesome, stripped back, aggressive opening track, but no keys? Which kind of sets the tone for an album that explores genre song by song rather than the hybrid kind of stuff on Angel Dust. So it's kind of like, I know we've kind of used a pizza analogy before, yeah. and here is how I would describe the difference between Angel Dust and King for a Day. Angel Dust is a pizza with all the toppings everywhere, all over the pizza. Like, someone just threw every topping they possibly could all over the pizza. This has a different topping slice by slice. So it's cohesive.
That is a very good analogy. I really think that every episode now, we should try to figure out how the band fits into the pizza analogy, because I think it's a pretty good way of slicing it up, if you will.
That's the thing, there really is something to be said for, obviously the pizza is the pie chart of food. So and pizza's fucking relatable. So
you could say that pie is the pie chart of food.
Well, it's a pizza pie.
I guess you're right. That's true. Yeah. If it's made in a circle, it's a pie. No, that's not true. All right, never mind. Let's get back.
Question: does this inherently make a cake a pie or a muffin a pie? We're just gonna
Or
get
a hamburger. Is it now a pie?
anything round people is a pie.
Yeah, that's true.
An orange is a pie. Okay, I'm gonna shut up about pie now. I'm gonna get hungry. So yeah, heading back into Get Out, I just think it's a really cool, straight ahead, proper driving song that, there's like 2 or 3 on this album, quite like this, but I think this is definitely the most mission statement one of them all.
It's also very cool how that song has kind of a false start to it. Like it comes in everything together, and then all of a sudden everything drops out except for the drums. And it's when you first hear it, it's kind of like, oh, what is this? It's like you think you know what you're about to get, but then you're like, nope, you're not. You don't know what you're about to get at all. I guess that's the whole album, really.
Definitely, and I think right off the bat, a big change for me, aside from the absence of Roddy's keys, is the difference in guitar tone. Jim had a very distinctive tone right through the first 4 albums, albeit different flavors of it, but still very much Jim's tone.
Yeah.
But there really is something to be said for how good of a guitarist and how varied in style Trey Spruance can be. In case people don't know, Trey Spruance is actually the guitarist primarily from Patton's other band, Mr. Bungle. And he's an absolute beast in that as well, and I feel like the Bungle influence, especially with the combination of Trey and Mike Patton in the band, it allowed them to really explore different genres that they perhaps wouldn't have been able to do with Jim, despite the fact I miss Jim, It's still a very cool way to approach an album.
Plus, at that point, Bungle had 2 albums at that point, I believe, or was the second Bungle after this? I don't remember.
I think that the second Bungle might have come out just before this. I'm not 100% sure.
So like I was thinking that, where you have Jim Martin was a part of Faith No More and a founder of Faith No More, and then Mike Patton comes in and eventually starts sort of flexing his creative muscles, if you will. Whereas Trey Spruance already knows the Mike Patton way of working. So he comes into Faith No More and he's like, okay, Mike, I trust you. What do you want to do? So I think maybe he handled it a little bit better. And so maybe that's why this album is the way that it is, because it's more like, I feel like they probably have very similar mindsets and they're able to work off of each other really easily. So, but I mean, you are right that Trey Spruance is really good on this, and the guitar sounds really good, but it really is a point in the band where something is missing, and I mean, I wouldn't have wanted somebody else to just steal Jim Martin's tone and try to do him. So I guess it is what it is, but it is an issue with the album where I just go, okay, this could be better, but he is still really fucking good. You're right there.
Definitely. And then that leads me into probably the biggest, I say one of them. I said this album was a grower for me, and here's a song that didn't strike me the first time I heard it, but as time's gone by, I've really come to appreciate it and the vibe it gives off. And Ricochet, which is track 2, is kind of a alt metal with an Eastern twist, which is something I love now, but at the time I was kind of a Real Thing Angel Dust purist, so I was like, Patton and Jim is the ideal sound. This is different, but as it grew on me, and the chorus is really cool, and overall, this song took me a long time to appreciate it, but when I finally did, something clicked, and I love it now. And it's that ascending kind of, it's always funny until someone gets hurt. That part, I love that section of the song.
It's very well written. It has a lot of it's almost like it has a little peak at one point, but then it has another peak. It's like the pre-chorus could easily be a chorus, and then or maybe it's I don't know what you would call it. That's why I like a lot of their songwriting, because you can't really just put the verse chorus verse thing on a lot of it. Some of it you can, but songs like this you can't. But it is really well written, because it is the part that you think is the best part. It's topped by another part, and so that's kind of cool.
For sure. And then, which leads us into another Grower track, Evidence. Now, this chilled out jazz funk lounge song, I mean, I was already kind of aware that Faith No More could do this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They'd played Edge of the World and Easy and that kind of lounge style, but on this they really fleshed it out, and they had like real string sections, and it's just a cool different song, and Patton really shows off his lower range on this as well, really showing off that kind of thing. Because before, even on Angel Dust, he still had a little bit of this left over. only a tiny bit, but I think this is Patton sounds very different on this album, and I think this is the beginning of the kind of modern Patton sound. Because on Disco Volante, which is the second Bungle full length, there's not really any standout vocal moments. That whole album is just kind of this weird experimental vibe kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's not really any hooks on it in comparison to the first and third album of theirs. But, it's not one of my favorites, I'll admit, but I do enjoy it. And
you're talking about Evidence?
Yeah, I'm talking about it. Yeah,
it's got a really good vibe to it. Like it's the track order of the first half of the album to me is pretty spot on, because it takes you to these different places, and you don't get bored with it. It's like these different flavors. Like I said on the last episode, it's kind of like you dismantled Faith No More, and now you're just sort of looking at the parts that make them up individually. And so it's just an interesting listen from the get-go.
For sure. And then you get Gentle Art of Making Enemies, which, first of all, happy birthday, fucker. That line was always my favorite. And the part where he sounds like Peter Griffin from Family Guy also makes me giggle. The okay, enemy, you are. He does some really interesting vocal deliveries on this song. It's in a similar vein to Get Out, with its kind of kind of driving ahead, upbeat, punky metal style, but it's much more dynamic. And
I had an old friend when this album came out, and we were both big fans of this album, and he would always call the chorus of this song their Iron Maiden chorus. Like, it seems like it could be on an Iron Maiden song, and I'm like, I totally hear that.
Yeah, it's that. Well, all you need is just one more excuse. Yeah, holy shit! I have never noticed that until now. That could work. I might cook something up on that one. That'd be fun to hear. Yeah. But yeah, like I say, it's a much more dynamic but stylistically similar track to Get Out. So it's keeping the metal side of Faith No More alive, while kind of drip feeding in these other styles that they can also pull off, which leads me again into another out of left field track with Star AD, which is this like jazz funk thing, but it's in a more hectic, funky way than the more smooth vibes of Evidence. It's just this like his vocal delivery on that as well is insane.
He's amazing. Yeah, the whole song is one of those things where you could never have dreamed up them doing this song, but you hear it and you're like, this is perfect. I mean, it's it's the most, I think out of this entire album, it's the one where I'm like, I don't know what they were thinking, but they fucking nailed it because it's like it's very weird. It's almost like it's part game show theme song and part pop song. It's like there's so many things going on. Like it's crazy.
I would say that I kind of view this album as what Mr. Bungle's first album would have been if they didn't jump genres between sections of a song.
Oh yeah.
And just jumped between songs because this here they're not really hybrid tracks, they're just tracks in a style.
Yeah.
So, you know, with the exception of maybe a few, which then leads me quite nicely into Cuckoo for Kaka, which is what I believe to be the most classic Faith No More song on this album. Yeah. It's got Mike Borden's like booga-dicka, 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 black kind of thing going on. It's got Billy's bass holding it down, really weird atmospheric key sounds, and the section where those like really bliss strings come in sounds like it could be on an older Faith No More album.
Totally. And that song, that's probably in my top favorite Mike Patton screams when he gets to the you can't kill it part. Yeah, you can't kill it. He sounds unhinged. And I'm like, that's so great.
Like the delivery on this song is so deranged and manic. He like some of the voices he uses in this song, it's like only a madman could cook this shit up.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a bleed no more choice butter. Those jumping between these styles.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's mad. You know, this is, like I said, this is probably the most Mr. Bungle Faith No More album. So if you like genre hopping, but something a little more accessible than Mr. Bungle, this is probably the album for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, my favorite part on the album is that part where those string sounds come in, about halfway through, before it's cold and it's smooth and it's like in the, no, it's not. It's the part where it just goes, hey! Or something like that.
Yeah, it's like it's the midsection. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop making pattern noises before I leave my voice completely shot for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Because the man has.
Let's not even attempt. Let's leave it for the master.
Yeah. And then I would say this next track is the song that stood out to me as the one I didn't like the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
And I actually know how to say this properly, but I'm going to say my original dumb 14-year-old pronunciation of it. Carol Ho Voador. It's actually it's actually Caralho Voador.
Oh.
If I am correct.
That was sexy.
It was. I need to learn a second language, but I'm too dumb at language to be able to do shit. So like,
I don't know if I've ever pronounced the name of this song out loud. I just look at it and go, that one that starts with a C. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Which actually translates to flying dick.
That's
it actually does.
I learned something here, folks. I never bothered to Google translate the title of this song. I'm glad I know now.
Apparently, if I'm correct, it's kind of, I don't know if I'm 100% accurate, but it's kind of like someone who pretends to be cool, but they really aren't. And it's this like, I don't know, flying dick is just such a fun idea to think about.
I guess that kind of goes along with the chorus. The my lips are moving, but there's no sound. Someday somebody's gonna get run down.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of get it.
Yeah, like I say, I used to dislike it, then it grew on me, and it probably is the only bossa nova song I have on my iPod, you know. But it gets that accolade. But yeah, the Roddy's keys really do it for me on this one. That kind of like sounding thing. I've come to appreciate its place on the album, especially because it actually breaks up the two, in my opinion, most probably two of the most similar tracks on the album. You know, you get Ugly in the Morning, which is like it's kind of like Cuckoo for Kaka did meth. So it's like it's even more deranged than Cuckoo for Kaka, but it's from the same kind of ballpark. And I don't know whether or not their placing on the album is intentional to kind of keep the listener invested in like the kind of classic Faith No More sound.
Yeah.
But, you know, I feel like there's a lot of duplicate-ish tracks on this album. Like you've got What a Day and Dig in the Grave. You know, you've got Cuckoo for Kaka and Ugly in the Morning. It's almost like they're kind of sister tracks where they have the same vibe but tackle it differently.
Yeah, and I remember the first time that I heard "Ugly in the Morning" when I first listened to the album. I remember I couldn't understand what he was saying in the chorus, and I purposely didn't look at the lyrics because I was just listening to the album, and I was the whole time listening to what the fuck is he saying? Because if you don't know, the song is called "Ugly in the Morning." The way he's saying things, it's so weird. It's like, you know, it's like you can't even understand it. And so finally, once you know what it's called, you start to hear what he's doing vocally. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. But at first I was like, what the fuck is this song?
Until it gets to the end when he's just yelling gibberish and the whole song falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Down, look at blah, 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 blah. Just that like weird, holy shit, the song is ending. How do we end this? It's probably one of Faith No More's most chaotic tracks.
Yeah, I really would. Whenever something like that happens in a song where there's a really odd vocal ending to it that probably couldn't be duplicated, it always makes me want to be able to go back and listen to what the other ones were, because clearly he didn't do that once. So I'm like, was there a more straightforward ending? Was there one where he did something totally different? And so it's like, those, as a fan, those are the things I'm interested in. Like, how did he get to that? Like, was that literally a one take, or did he go, I have some different ideas and we'll just pick which one works the best, you know?
It's also kind of like when a song has a fade out and you know that the band kind of jammed on a solo for a little longer than the song was. I kind of want to know what like the last notes of those songs are.
Usually, like, usually it's just the first note of the riff. You know, it's just a ring out. It's like that's why like, you know, I don't necessarily like fade outs in songs that much, but I'll take a fade out over just a generic ending on the one. You know, because I'm like, you know. The endings of songs are always weird to me, especially live. Like I want bands to just end songs. And one of my pet peeves, which is funny because our favorite band Metallica is guilty of this, where a song ends and instead of just ending it and moving on, they got to go and like, okay, the song is over. Just hit it at the end and then say, all right, moving on, because if we cut off all of these endings, we'll have time for one extra song. So let's just fucking move on.
I feel like they could get away with that on like one or two songs, but yeah, if you do it to excess, it does get annoying. Yeah. If every song ends with like a, it's like kind of, okay, you're milking it.
It's almost like that's when the applause sign comes on for the crowd to cheer. But anyway, that has nothing to do with this particular song that we're on, because this one has a great ending that just seems like, for sure. Just seems like, you know, the car was like on its last legs and everything just fell apart, you know, and it just fell onto the side of the road.
But yeah, I remember hearing this song for the first time and being like, what the fuck happened here? But yeah, it's almost like the band were playing in the tour bus and the tour bus went into a spin and just started rolling. It's just but yeah, we've camped out on Ugly in the Morning long enough, I'd say. Yeah, cool. So next up we got Dig in the Grave.
Yes.
So as a single, it's a striking introduction to a more stripped back Faith No More, but I actually prefer What a Day as this type of song rather than Digging the Grave.
Which I don't get that at all. Like Digging the Grave is pretty fucking perfect. Like it's just a great example of the band knowing how to nail a straightforward rock song with killer hooks in it that could easily just go on the radio at any time. I mean, that's my opinion anyway.
See, I will get to my reasons on What a Day, but yeah, like I say, it's not a bad song by any means. I just prefer What a Day, but that midsection, like I think this was the first single from the album, wasn't it? Was it the first single?
So I don't remember singles for this album because I bought it when it came out, and at this point, this was 1995, and I wasn't watching MTV that much anymore. I had sort of fallen off of it. And
Headbangers Ball had ended by then, hadn't it?
Yeah, it ended the year before. And so I don't remember seeing the video for Digging the Grave until way later. So I think maybe it was more of a European thing. I feel like they probably did better with this album over there. And so that was probably just one of those things where the Faith No More album came out and people just weren't excited about it. Well, some of us were, but I guess a lot of people weren't.
Yeah, I would say, like, as a single, this would probably be like the best kind of introduction to a more stripped back Faith No More. Despite the fact that, a big thing for me is that Roddy plays keys on What a Day. So
there's keys in the middle of Digging the Grave. After the little drum break, and then it comes in. There's keys under that.
I suppose
it's more of a mood thing. It's not really anything that sticks out.
I suppose I kind of forgot that because in the music video for it, Roddy is playing a guitar.
Oh yeah. Now I'm all like, is there keys there? And I just put them there in my brain. No, there's keys.
I think it might be kind of a moody guitar chord.
You may be right. You may be right. It might be something melodic underneath. Now I want to go back and listen to it. But it's probably important to point out, and I don't know how confirmable this is because you can only put so much weight into like things that you read after the fact. But the things that you read, the reason why Roddy wasn't in a lot of the tracks was because he had a lot of deaths in his immediate friends and family around that time. And so apparently he was not completely there emotionally. And so I think when they were putting the songs together, there were just some where he was like, these are fine. You don't need me. I'm kind of busy,
Yeah. I think around that time, I think he was close with Courtney Love. So Kurt's death shook him.
Oh yeah. And he died the year before. So probably around the time they were recording this, I think is probably when he died.
And then, obviously, I think his dad died as well around this time. Yeah, I think it was one of his parents.
So it's one of those things where it's a sticking point when it comes to this album, but at the same time, I'm kind of like I totally understand it, and I'm glad they went ahead and did the album anyway instead of putting it off.
Yeah, and I think as well it kind of serves the album because it doesn't feel. I think the absence of keys doesn't feel forced either because, with that backstory behind it, this album in no way feels like they're trying to keep up with their contemporaries. They're just doing what they do best, and that's always what they have done, but especially so on this album because it's a complete change in the band's formula. But yeah, that was Digging the Grave. Next up, I've got one of my favorites from the album, which Chuck Mosley actually did a pretty good cover of it himself before he passed away. Take This Bottle. I think this is a excellent, moving country style ballad. I haven't really got anything other than the fact that I just really love this song.
Yeah, it's great.
It's almost like if RV was taken seriously, you know.
Yeah.
In a way where there's no tongue in cheek. It feels very sincere for a Faith No More song, you
Yep.
know, because they kind of tend to shy away from saying that they have lyrical depth, even if they do. You know, Patton usually shrugs off his lyrics, says, "Oh, I just picked these words because I like the way they sound." But every now and again, he'll give like a little nugget of information away, like, I suppose Midlife Crisis is kind of about Madonna, and it's like, well, that just opens up a whole new can of worms,
Yeah.
you know, it's, and it does make me wonder if a lot of the time his lyrics have just been trolling us the entire time, but this of all of them feels really sincere, and I think that's why Mosley pulled his version off so well, because it's a little bit more from the heart in a way.
Yeah, it's also there's a beauty in the simplicity of it all. Like there's not a whole lot of lyrics to it, and there's not
Yeah.
anything flashy about it. It is just sort of a feeling, very
Yeah.
straightforward kind of country ballad song.
Yeah, and I feel like Roddy does have a shining moment on this when, you know, his keys really add that kind of they do add that like kind of big country edge to it, that kind of country ballad feel. And
Yeah.
this album is a metal album with a shitload of non-metal tracks on
Yeah.
it, you know? And like, of the album's 14 tracks, you know, I'd say about half of them aren't in the straight up metal style, even though on the flip side of that, the metal ones are heavy.
Yeah.
So it really is kind of like if Angel Dust was pulled apart.
Mm-hmm.
So like we said with the pizza analogy, but shut up about fucking pizza, Will. God.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've got Take This Bottle. Great song. Heading straight into the prog opus of King for a Day, which took me years to truly appreciate. This 6-minute title track, which just completely opens up in the middle to this epic psychedelic breakdown thing going on. And you know, I can't believe it took me years to notice how mind-blowing the explosive parts of this song is.
Yeah.
But good Lord, like, what a song. And yeah, you know, if it's what was it you said about King for a Day? I forget from the previous episode. It has yet to air.
Well, no, I don't think I said anything about the song specifically. I just think that for some reason, after this is when the album falls off for me a little bit, because I think this
Yeah.
song is so strong. This song would have been a great closer, or I don't know. It almost seems like it's a culmination of everything on the album, because it's got the keys on it. It's got the more funky bass going on it, but then it also has these levels of things going up and kind of being a little bit heavier, and it really takes you on a journey. So it almost feels like it should be a closing track. Just I don't know. Even the way that it ends, it would be
Yeah.
so cool if the album ended with him saying, "Don't let me die with that silly look in my eye," and then the album ends. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be great. But then it doesn't, and then we get 3 more songs that are good, but in my opinion, not as good as the rest of the album.
See, this is where we differ on this album, because
Yeah.
these 3 songs are favorites of mine. So I'm gonna jump straight to the defense of What a Day. In my opinion, plus the fact that Roddy is much more prominent on this one, is my preferred song to Dig in the Grave. And while they're similar in vibe, I feel like this one has some more standout moments for me, especially like the kind of harmonized, like, you're right, kill the body and the head will die. There's a lot more standout vocal moments for me on this, and the chorus to me, you know, that what a day, if you can look it in the face. You know, I love that kind of chorus is much more my kind of thing.
I think a lot of it for me is the fact that there's too many repeated lyrics, which as a songwriter, I listen to it and where they're repeated, I go, oh, he didn't have anything else to go here. And so he repeats words a lot or phrases a lot in it. And so, because like you shut up, KO dead, you shut okay. But then it goes to another part, and he's saying it again. It's almost like, all right, he had nothing else lyrically to go there, and maybe that was his intention. But as a listener, I'm all like, oh, so there's nothing to sink your teeth into lyrically with a lot of the song, because even the chorus, what a day, it's like that he says what a day a lot in it. Even after it, he's just going, day, what a. I'm just like, okay. So I think that's probably what drags it down, because musically, like, I don't think I have any problem with it. I think everyone sounds great.
I think for me, this song in particular, I would call like the pairing of What a Day and Last to Know as the grunge section of the album, because What a Day, like you say, that what a day, what a day, what a day. I don't mind. Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you notice that, like, Nirvana kind of breed influence on that one, and then obviously on Last to Know, my notes read this: 3 words, Stone Temple Pilots. The riff in the middle could have been Encore. Because it has that thing that they were doing with these real heavy riffs with the palm muting in them. Like it's very grunge on the heavier side. Yeah, the only thing that really sets it apart is Patton's kind of operatic vocal, but those chord choices and that down is pure core era Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah, that part's pretty cool. I also always really I don't know if I like it or don't like it. It's a lyric in the song that I always hear and I go, I'm struggling with how I feel about this, and that's the lyric, can't you see there's only one me and that me is me. That's the lyric that I go, is this good or not? I don't know. It's one of those middle of the road weird lyrics where I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just gonna move on.
That sounds like a first draft for Sweating Bullets. Hello, me. Did you know the real me is me? Hello, me. Oh, and then finally, God, this is my longest track by track ever.
It's my fault. I'm jumping in a lot.
No, it's cool, because reality, there's a 6 album deal on this episode. Now I think about it technically. So so finally, Just a Man, in my opinion, is the most majestic album closer in their entire discography, especially with that choir at the end. I love the way Angel Dust ends. I love the way The Real Thing ends. I like the way all their records end, really, apart from maybe We Care a Lot. But this song is something else for me, especially when the choir inexplicably comes in at the end, because it's a very big vibey song, and then you get to the man was born to love, yet he has sought to fly to high, to kiss the sun of east and west, and it's almost like this fantasy movie, and then all of a sudden erupts into this gospel grand finale, and it really does show off a different side of Faith No More that I think holds up to the rest of their discography extremely well.
Yeah, it's a great song and a really good closer. I think that it's a song where the second half delivers a lot more than the first half does. So it ends up being a great song in the end, but when listening to the album, the last 3 songs are just the ones where I kind of go, all right, well, now we're at the end of the album. Like there's a real, we're done kind of feeling, because now we got to get through these last 3 songs. But I always really love the ending of Just a Man. It's beautiful, really. So
yeah, I think it is one of the most beautiful moments in their discography. But yeah, that wraps up how long have we been on the first album?
40 minutes or almost 40 minutes on one album. It's okay because I'm always very quick with mine. And that's a big reason why I've decided to start interjecting with you, because I'm like, well, mine, I kind of blow out really quickly. So, we might as well, really dig in on yours. But so my number 3 is Introduce Yourself.
Knew it.
Right on. From 1987. So this is the last album with Chuck Mosley on vocals, and it's the first, because their first album's really good to me, but this is the one where I think they've fully realized the Faith No More sound.
Yeah.
There's a real big improvement in the songwriting and in the production over their debut album. And honestly, I like this one because there's more of a guitar presence than there is on We Care a Lot. It's still very keyboard heavy, but the guitars pop out a lot more, and there's a lot of heavier guitar parts than on the first album, which once again brings us... Go ahead.
They kind of ditched that fizzy new wave synth sound and just became Faith No More. Because with the first album, like I say, it does feel a little bit demo-ish in places, even if it is, their first full-length album. And, I'm not one of those people that will turn around and say, oh, their first album's just a demo. But I do like We Care a Lot, but this is where Faith No More became what they would be.
Yeah. And I think that the production lends itself to really bringing out the sound of the band. But yeah, so this is, everything, all the elements are there. The Jim Martin's guitar sound, the keys, the bass, the drums, like everything is just like they got it right. They figured out what they were doing. And this album still, to me, even though you could equate Faith No More with other bands at the same time that were doing things where they incorporated funky stuff and rock, I still think that this sounds like no other band. I can't think of any other band that sounds like this. And the fact that they had that kind of original, goal or vision, by album 2, it's pretty great. And it's mostly because there's just a lot of different vibes in this album, and it's like a convergence of styles. Like you were saying about, King for a Day, they're all separated, but now, like, starting with Introduce Yourself, it's like they know how to meld these different elements together to make this really unique sound. And this album is just, to me, strong from start to finish. There's no skippable tracks. It's just banger after banger, and it's I don't know, it's really entertaining. And the only thing that, it's one of those things where now we're talking about albums that are so amazing that, one of them has to be lowered down. And with this one, the songwriting is so good, you kind of get a hint of where they were going to be going. And it's very clear that they were going to need a more dynamic vocalist in order to get there. But that being said, I love what Chuck Mosley does on this album. He just brings this chaotic energy to these songs. And even in his approach, like some of it seems like he either, wrote the lyrics right before he did them, or they were all just stream of consciousness lyrics, or ad libs or whatever. And something about that is really interesting with the music because, Mike Patton is he's a writer and he's very calculated, and everything I'm pretty sure is, even though he seems like he makes some off the cuff decisions, I think Mike Patton has a really clear vision of what he wants to do before he ever steps into a fucking vocal booth. And I think Chuck Mosley didn't. I think he was a guy that, depending on the day and what had happened the night before and what mood he was in, you could have gotten a completely different version of a song than the one that you got. And I think that's very cool. So that's honestly really all I have to say about this. We talked about it last time, but it's an album that just holds up today. Like it does not sound dated to me. It sounds unique. And that's something to be said when it's an album from 1987, that it still it still sounds so alive and energetic and new. It sounds like, something that you don't normally hear.
Yeah,
So
I would say the only Faith No More record to my ears that sounds dated is their first album, and that is probably solely based on the gear that Roddy was using at the time to get the synth patches he wanted, because
yeah,
it's very new wave, it's very new romantic, but by the time you get to introduce yourself, the sounds, especially in the synth and drum department, are much more sophisticated, and they
totally.
sound very much of not just more of an alt metal sound, but Faith No More's unique blend.
Yeah, and that's the thing that to remember in '87, the term alternative I don't even think was a thing in '87, and so alt
Yeah,
metal definitely wasn't. So the idea of this music, even though like you had bands like Fishbone and whoever that were doing these sort of genre blending kind of things, it really is like if you were going to do some sort of a beginnings of alt metal kind of conversation, this album would have to be included at the top because it sets the bar pretty high for what you can do. But
for
so
sure.
yeah, that's my number 3. Introduce yourself.
Cool. I can't believe we mentioned, just before I move on to my number 2, I can't believe we mentioned the Mosley era without mentioning the legendary skit at the start of Death March.
Oh,
Washington Boulevard, eastbound. 95 cents? Fuck you, I'll skate to the beach. And I'll look
better
getting there.
Getting there, yeah.
Down, 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 down.
Yeah.
I love that song. That skit just really shows off, that Chuck was very much his own character. And, I know we Faith No More fans tend to do a little bit of a pat and circle jerk, but it is important to note that the Mosley era really has some gems too. And
it really does. It's almost like Chuck's performances deliver this idea that Mike Patton can now improve upon and build off of. I think that I don't know anything about his perception of Faith No More when he joined, but I feel like he probably listened to Chuck Mosley and thought, well, clearly I can kind of go any direction I want, and so
yeah.
so Chuck Mosley really kind of just opened the door, for Mike Patton to have this big platform of his dynamic range and his ideas. So yeah,
Yeah.
Chuck's very important, and it just sucks that he didn't have a successful music career post this, because I think that he could have
Yeah.
done really cool shit.
He did do a lot of projects, but they never got much recognition. He was even in Bad Brains for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is unfortunate, and it's really interesting to look up the stuff that Doug Esper, he's written a book called Reintroducing Chuck Mosley. It's a good read, really interesting about Chuck's kind of character and
Interesting,
the story
okay.
of his friends and stuff. And it's not like a Chuck biography; it's more of like an outsider looking in kind of thing. But it's it's nice from what I've heard from the podcast Croissant episodes as well, where Doug appears. It's really interesting because you get to know the guy. And just before I move on to my number 2, something I wish we could have gotten but never did was a song that had a duet of Chuck and Mike on vocals, but sadly that's something that obviously following Chuck's death will sadly never happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ever did, because they did reunite with Chuck for some shows in 2016, about a year before he passed away, but I don't know if Mike got on stage with him.
I think because you were saying that they did shows where Chuck Mosley just did old songs with Chuck, but I do remember there being shows where Chuck came onto the stage and did like We Care a Lot and stuff with Mike. So they
were there.
Yeah.
I'll have to check those out.
I don't remember how many shows they did like that, but I remember seeing footage of them on the stage together. I don't know how many songs they did, but and then there's a really great picture of Mike and Chuck together, like backstage.
Yeah, I love that photo.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and it's cool because like neither of them were really ever bitter about it. You know, it was just kind of this like mutual respect they had for one another. You know, there was never any trash talking, like kind of Dave Mustaine versus Metallica kind of stuff. You know, it was, you know, there was never really any, you know, for a little bit maybe, but that feud fizzled out quick.
Well, there are some band member ejections or whatever that I think all parties understand why it happened. You know, it's like a never mind. See, I'm so shitty with names that now I'm literally trying to remember the original Iron Maiden vocalist's name, and I know him very well.
Paul Di'Anno.
Paul Di'Anno. Like the Paul Di'Anno firing from Iron Maiden, just even by his own accounts, he just wasn't interested in doing things. And, you know, sometimes it's just like everyone, there's no bitter feelings because it's like, you know, the band weren't happy and he just wasn't pulling his weight and he was aware that he wasn't pulling his weight. So it's like, you know, with Chuck, I as far as I know, it was, you know, drug issues and erratic behavior and stuff like that. And so, you know, I'm pretty sure that he was well aware of why he was kicked out.
Yeah, for sure. And so on that note, rest in peace, Chuck. Yeah. Rest in peace, Chuck. And my number 2 is The Real Thing.
Bam.
Boom. Bada bat boom pow. So we've got The Real Thing. Yeah, the classic album and their most commercially successful, you know. Slightly overplayed, but goddamn, the songs are fantastic.
I hate the phrase overplayed because it's all like anytime somebody says that, I'm all like, well, you could have turned the radio off or the TV off. You didn't have to hear it over and over again. Because to me, like I can hear Epic every day for the rest of my life, and I will never be tired of it because it's that good of a song.
Yeah, and you know, I've got kind of in my notes for Epic, overplayed maybe, but classic, of course. You know, I've got that kind of... I
didn't mean to jump ahead.
Oh, no, it's cool. Yeah, I suppose, you know, I do agree with the overplayed analogy, but I suppose it does feel weird that, you know, one song... It annoys me when people turn around and say Faith No More were a one-hit wonder, because they fucking weren't. You know, people just know Epic because... Well,
I think technically when it comes to chart position, they were a one-hit wonder, right? No, because We Care a Lot was a hit also, wasn't it? Mildly, it was a minor hit.
I think so. And you know, obviously you got to account for... I think Faith No More did a lot better outside of the US later on in...
So I guess it's more of an American thing, because in America, I think you could easily call them a one-hit wonder.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds fair, because from what I've noticed is that, you know, in Europe and Australia, you know, Faith No More was always very well received, especially during, you know, because I think the first TV show they appeared on during the King for a Day era was The Word, which was a show in Britain, and I feel like Faith No More were really embraced by Europe.
I think they were more understood over there than they were here.
Definitely. I feel like America, you know, just as an outsider looking in, is very scene driven.
Yep.
And so they'll like pick up on this is happening in this place. MTV, ignore everything else. Cameras over here, you know, kind of thing.
I think that the amount of people over here that want to be challenged by the music they listen to it's a large amount of people, but the people that want shit cookie cutter and very straightforward is fucking huge. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that I've just had to get really used to it, because that's, especially in metal, there is a lot of people just wanting things to be similar all the time. Otherwise, you're a poser or whatever. So
yeah, that shit gets tiring. Yeah, I can imagine that getting pretty played out pretty quick. Okay, lovely. Number 2 with The Real Thing. Obviously, classic album, most commercially successful. Songs are fantastic. You know, it's the album that gets the most attention commercially. My girlfriend tried to kind of ruin The Real Thing for me because of the vocals, but she failed. So she would come up to me all the time with her nose pegged, and she'd be like blah 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 blah, like in relation to the War Pigs cover and stuff.
To be fair though, like even live, he it's almost like he was pushing that style to the most obnoxious that it could be.
Yeah, like purposefully taking the piss.
Like he almost like sometimes he would even sing like with his tongue out. He would do a lot of things like that. Like he was really trying to puke up this vocal style. Yeah. I could totally get why somebody wouldn't like it or think it was pretty amusing, but it's interesting that it's very unique to this album. Like it's that this particular style.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, there's a tiny like slither of it on Angel Dust, and it's still a little bit prominent on the first Bungle album, but aside from that, every other Patton project is pretty divorced from this vocal style.
Yeah.
But yeah, From Out of Nowhere, in my opinion, best opening track in their catalog, hands down. Awesome way to open a record. Mm-hmm. That combination of the riff, that everybody's doing something different in this song, because the guitar and bass line are different. The drums are doing their thing. Patton's doing his vocal melody, and then obviously you've got the iconic kind of keyboards going on. And it really is, it might be a bit poppy, but in a good way, because it's just straight up catchy and enjoyable. Obviously, if you're a Faith No More fan and you're watching this, Epic gets talked about a fair amount, so I won't camp out here too long, but it's the album that garnered them, that kind of stigma of Red Hot Chili Peppers knockoff, even though no other song they've done sounds like Epic, which
and I was a fan of the Chili Peppers at the time when I got into Faith No More, when Epic came out, and I didn't make that connection. For some reason it didn't seem like a thing that you could compare to me.
Yeah, I feel like the Anthony Kiedis Mike Patton feud just kind of went down in history, and now it's just kind of there, and it became a little bit of a meme for people to take the piss out of. But I won't delve too deep into that because I don't know all the full details off my own head. But going on to track 3, Falling to Pieces is one of the most underappreciated songs in their catalog, in my opinion. It's one of my faves, and the video for this song is my favorite music video of all time. It has everything I love about this era of music and music videos, and it is like a more fun version of the Epic video, which I already loved.
Yeah.
And in this, they just go wild. From an imagery standpoint, this is my favorite era of the band. Both in what they wear, how they present themselves, and also the videos are amazing as well, especially with that like hand with the eye in it. It's just such a unique image.
The video for Falling to Pieces is like, it comes across to me as the most expensive college art project ever done.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it really does. They had all these ideas of things to do. Like we got to film this where he's upside down, and we got to film this where these weird ceramic fish that are exploding or whatever it was. And then we got to have the eye and the hand, and then we got to have, it's just like all these different ideas just sort of explode into this music video.
Yeah, and there's a little clip of in the video and there's an extended behind the scenes clip of it as well, where all of the band's members are on each other's instruments. So Mike Patton, they all swap their instruments for a bit, and it's a fun little Easter egg for the fans to dig into.
I think that's on the video croissant or whatever. They have that on there.
Actually, funny you should mention that. I have next to me, I know the listeners won't be able to see this, but I have in my hands right now 2 VHS tapes, and I've got Video Croissant and Live at Brixton Academy, which are both excellent. And I love
the old school video store plastic cases that they are in.
Yeah.
I love that.
Hell yeah, man. I've got Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2 next to them as well.
Wow. I don't even have a VCR. So if something's on VHS, I'm just like, I'm never mind. I'm not going to buy it or watch it.
I just like holding it, to be honest. I like being able to say, this is from a time, and I just like knowing there's just something about holding something in your hand. It's almost like this talisman.
That's how I feel about cassettes, because I have a handful of cassettes, but I don't necessarily want to listen to them. I'm just like, I like that they come from a time that's probably, especially that. Well, VHS probably as well. Any cassettes, like that's something we will never come back to. Like I can't imagine a scenario where those come back to being prominent in any way at all. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I know bands nowadays are doing like limited special edition releases, just as little, releases to have. But, I've got a tape deck, and, I'm just really obsessed with old stuff. So if you've got any tapes that you want to get rid of, hit me up and I'll take them. But yeah. So moving on to track 4, we've got Surprise! You're dead! There we go. So yeah, after 3 pretty radio-friendly songs, it's a very front-loaded album with regards to singles. After the 3 singles, the band turns into a weird syncopated version of Slayer. Again, awesome song. And the first time I heard it, it really took me off guard. I was not expecting this. Even from the song title, I should have known I was getting into something a bit heavier, but I didn't expect them to just go full-on chuggy thrash.
And I really do think this is the song because I got the album after seeing the Epic video, and I do think from listening to the album for the first time, once Surprise You're Dead kicks in, I think that's when I finally went, this is like my favorite thing I've ever heard, because the combination of the songs going into that, it was just this feeling of they could do anything in the next song, and I don't know what's coming next. These guys are just kind of doing their own thing, and it's fun to listen to albums like that for the first time.
Definitely. And that leads me into another, pretty heavy in places track, Zombie Eaters, which is one of the best written Faith No More tracks.
Yeah.
Like all of the sections are amazing. Everyone's doing what they need to do. It's almost like prog in a way. And I have a fun little story. I accidentally wrote the intro to this song completely independently of knowing the band. When I was first getting into playing guitar, I was playing the do 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 do. I was like, that's cool, because I wanted to write something that sounded like Welcome Home Sanitarium. I was sat there. I was only like 12, and I was plinking away at my first ever electric, and I was like, that sounds really cool. And I tabbed it out and everything, only for 2 years later to find out that it had already been written, and I felt gutted about it, because I was like, damn it, I knew it was awesome. It was too cool to not have been done. But yeah, I love Zombie Eaters. And then you get the real thing, which is 8 minutes of a lesson in how to create a perfect vibe in a song. I'm just jumping in the middle here, because the first version of the album I own, side 1 ends with Edge of the World. And then
the side 2 starts with The Real Thing. So there is kind of so when you listen to it back to back, Zombie Eaters and The Real Thing have a similar vibe, like more of an epic, not the song epic, but an epic quality to the songs.
Yeah.
But in my original version of the album, the way I heard it was you had this loungy song or whatever the Edge of the World would be called, like an easy listening kind of track, and then it begins again on side B. But yeah.
I'm guessing that was the cassette version?
It was, because the vinyl I have doesn't even have Edge of the World on it at all.
Yeah, I've got an original pressing of The Real Thing, and it doesn't have Edge of the World.
Yeah.
And I'm going off of the CD running order, because that's what I got. So yeah, 8 minutes of vibing perfection, and when those riffs kick in, really gives me goosebumps, that like digging with the Roddy's high up like keys going on.
Yeah.
And then when everything locks together for that, this is so unreal.
Yeah.
It's
songs
so
like
powerful.
It's songs like this that I was basically talking about before, where they couldn't have done songs like this with Chuck Mosley. Like you need Mike Patton to, one, when you get the real syncopated parts and he's right with the rhythm, you need him to do that spot on. But at the same time, the vocal melodies that he wrote to a lot of these songs, they had to have been beyond what the band was even expecting when they wrote the songs, because he brings these songs to a much higher level of already excellent music, and he just. So I think that if Chuck Mosley was involved, I don't think the songs would have succeeded the way that they do here.
Yeah, although strangely, I can kind of hear Chuck doing the like, "This is so unreal, what a feel," or like kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I do get when it comes to the kind of parts.
But even in the kick, that when the other part of the verse kicks in, where he's doing the higher vocals, like his stuff is so well written that I'm just like, it had to have been that way. It had to have been able to be that sort of. It's almost like he brings a pop sensibility into his metal songwriting, So, so it ends up working out really well.
I think that's a great way to put this album, because it's not a pop metal album, but it has pop-like qualities to a prog metal kind of backdrop.
There's hooks everywhere.
Yeah, there really is. It's a really catchy album, and I would say, going on to the next track, Underwater Love would be similar in vibe to Falling to Pieces. It's underappreciated in that same kind of, maybe, for some people a little bit too poppy, but I like it. And that solo at the end that Jim Martin does is badass.
Yeah.
And I wish Roddy had used that piano strings pad sound a little more, because he uses it a lot in this song, and he uses it in what's it called, Falling to Pieces, and I always loved that sound, but I think he only ever used it on this album. He might use it a little bit on Angel Dust as well, but those are the only two examples. But yeah, and then you get The Morning After, again another underappreciated one. I feel like the groove here is great, and Roddy really shines with the atmosphere he creates with his strings.
Yeah. It's like in that song, it's almost like the keys are the most important part of that song.
Oh, for sure. There's so much of Roddy's playing is responsible for the songs moving forward, because it would be so easy for everything to just be bunk, 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 and just keep going. Because that would be the song without, things in there as well. But, my God, even the like underappreciated tracks here are still really awesome. And then you get this Woodpecker from Mars, awesome instrumental metal song that explodes halfway through. And one thing I noticed is that like bow, down, down, bow.
Yeah.
They kind of camp out on that vibe. I hear it in the start of the solo to Epic. I
Oh,
don't know if
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that same part, and I feel like they thought, hey, that part of Epic is really cool. Let's really camp out on that and milk it for what we can.
Yeah.
But they managed to create again this vibe, and this is an instrumental track, and it clocks in at about like 6 minutes. So they do a lot of interesting stuff. It's not a shreddy song, but you know the rhythms they play with and the riffs they use and the melodies they choose. It's a very cinematic thing.
I never even noticed how long the song was because it doesn't feel like a 6 minute song. It's a very entertaining song.
It definitely is. It takes you somewhere, and that's the important thing with instrumental sections is to take the listener on a journey, and then after that you get the, you know, considering Patton would take the piss out of it live, you know, with the la 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 kind of things in there. Their cover of War Pigs is really lets Mike Bordin show off his drumming. Because I feel like
it was his audition to become Ozzy's drummer.
yeah, exactly. So you can tell that there's Sabbath fans in the band, you know, and I actually used this as a reference to play this song in a band because everybody else knew the Black Sabbath version, but I preferred what Mike Bordin did with his drums on this. Yeah. So I went for more of his kind of fills. Voice crack. Sorry. I'm still going through puberty, people. It is a tremendous experience. But yeah, War Pigs' faithful cover. Bordin's drumming really shines, and I think Jim had a great time playing this. Being the metal guy and all that.
Yeah, it's honestly the point in the album where I don't know why it's there. It's the only thing on the album that I'll sometimes skip over because, I mean it's not on the vinyl, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, it's too on the nose. Like they kind of do their own. It's not really their own version of it. It's just the individual musicians put their own stamp on the parts while still kind of playing them traditionally. And so the song is too, it's already a song that I love it, but it's one of those songs that even hearing Black Sabbath play it, sometimes I'm like, it seems like it goes on a bit too long. And so on this album, I'm always kind of like, yeah, they could have left that off and I would have been fine with it.
It is pretty indulgent as a song anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would agree. But then on my, you know, CD introduction to this album that I had, Edge of the World is kind of this tongue-in-cheek lounge song, which is actually about, it's a true story as well. It's based on a child predator who was from San Francisco, and he owned like a nearby club and did some pretty nefarious things with underage ladies, girls. Yeah. But, you know, once you know the meaning behind this song, it changes the vibe a little bit. But I still think it's a cool, fun, chill song to put on if you can divorce yourself from the storyline.
It's also got some real sort of the funny lyrics, you can trust me, I'm no criminal, but I'd kill my mother to be with you.
Yeah. It, like I say, it's that tongue-in-cheek lounge song.
Yeah.
You know, they've done this many times, you know, with Easy and various other covers, like I Started a Joke, Spanish Eyes, This Guy's in Love with You. They could make a whole lounge album out of the lounge songs they've done.
Yeah.
Like, I know I tend to call them lounge songs, even if they aren't, but this one definitely is.
Yeah.
And creepy lyrics juxtaposed with a nonchalant, straight-faced lounge backdrop.
I think that's how it works too. It works perfectly.
I think Underwater Love is about drowning someone. But yeah, that is my take on my second favorite Faith No More album.
Cool, and I'm not even gonna pause for a second because that's also my number 2. So we have locked in our 2 and 1 on this particular podcast. So
nicely done.
So yeah, The Real Thing is my number 2. And like I said before, this was my intro to Faith No More. Seeing the video for Epic when it came out, and it just totally blew my mind because I was into hip hop and I was into metal, and the vibe of the song just was really, it spoke to what I wanted to hear at the time. And so I quickly got the album on cassette, and I don't really need to go too much into this because I feel like a lot of the things I'm going to say we said in our 1989 episode, because this was our number 1 album of 1989. But I'll just quickly go through that. It's interesting to me when From Out of Nowhere starts, because if you listen to the albums sequentially, this is the first very straightforward rocker they ever did. It's almost like it signals a new era of Faith No More, not just with a new vocal style, but also with just like, we're cutting the fat and we're not afraid to just make a straightforward rock song. And it's just it's great. It signals something new, but also something equally or more awesome, if you will. And really, like, the whole album, the confidence that comes through in the performances and the songs is undeniable. Like, it just sounds like a band that knows they already figured out who they were on their last album, and now they're like, well, we know how to do this better than we did on the album before, and they do. And it's just amazing songwriting. It's expertly crafted songs, especially when you're talking about things like Zombie Eaters and The Real Thing, things like that. And I've said a lot of these things already that I was going to say. Really, like I said before, Mike Patton bringing his pop sensibilities on some things. Like, he knew how to write catchy melodies, but also he knew how to do everything vocally, as we've all learned down the line. But on this album in particular, he's not a one note kind of person. He knows how to fit something. He knows what's appropriate for each section of the song, and he delivers what the song needs and almost elevates it even more from where it could just be if you had just a good vocalist. He is an exceptional vocalist with exceptional ideas. And the real big thing about this album for me was that it really taught me how far you could go with rock music, and how you didn't have to just stick to the boundaries of whatever genre or style you were lumped into. And I was obsessed with the band when this album came out. We talked about it on that other podcast where I talked about how I videotaped every television performance and every music video. I was obsessed with them. And to me, this is the Faith No More sound perfected. I think that they nailed it so much here that clearly you don't want to do it again. So it's like, we perfected our sound, now let's fuck with it. And that's what we get with the next album we're going to be talking about, which I think we should just go straight right into it, because I think all the best bands in the world, to me, are the kind of bands that they put out an album where they absolutely nail it and everyone's kind of into it. They're not going to rest there and do album number 2 of the same shit. They're going to push things forward. They're going to fuck with things to just see what happens. And then that leads us to our number 1. Sir, go ahead and lay it out here.
Angel motherfucking Dust.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Angel Dust. What else can I say? I have long praised this as the perfect album, in my opinion. This album to me, I want it duly noted. My three favorite bands: Metallica, Faith No More, and Ugly Kid Joe. They're all joint first for me in how much I love them, but Metallica would probably be, they're the first band I got into, so I'm going to have to give them the crown for the first favorite. And then my favorite song out of all of them is Everything About You by Ugly Kid Joe. Mm-hmm. But then my favorite all-round flawless desert island album would be Angel Dust. Angel Dust is such a cohesive yet extremely varied album that I think I could honestly listen to this and nothing else for the rest of my days and not get tired of it.
I can see that.
This is the one album I can confidently tell you and everyone listening to this, lock me in a room for a year and play this, and I will want to stay in that room.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a mind-blowing, revolutionary, influential record. The texture and atmosphere is insanely good. Like the vibe they create on here is this ascended level of their already amazing core sound. Like you say, they perfected on The Real Thing. And then they just took it to the fucking stratosphere with this album, because it doesn't feel like they, maybe apart from the vocal technique, they're not really rejecting any of their past, but more doing it much differently, at the same time keeping that feel.
It always comes across to me as kind of an effortless experimentation. They're not trying too hard to be weird, but they ended up creating an album that some people would call weird. It's not necessarily weird to me because of that, because it's not trying too hard. It just seems like this natural thing that these group of musicians put out that just happens to kind of they're not like bursting out of the boundaries of the Faith No More sound, but they did like knock, like they're expanding the walls. Like there's way more room now, and they're inviting more ideas in and working them into their sound.
For sure. And the notes that I have on this are absolutely nuts, because I actually I actually did a separate podcast episode, which I am in the process of setting up. I'm setting up a podcast called Eddie Speaks with my friend Dan Matthews.
Please tell me it speaks with two X's.
It is Speaks with two X's.
Yeah.
I had to do it. It was the best kind of podcast name I could come up with for my kind of thing.
So far, the fact that you came up with the title of this podcast and that one, I think that is your calling in life, is coming up with cool names for podcasts.
I could honestly, I'm seriously just trying to decide whether or not I should make a business out of being a name generator. Yeah. I could just sit at a desk, someone could tell me what their company is, give me about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'd give them an absolute corker of a name. But yeah. Eddie Speaks. It's gonna be a little similar to this, except the episodes are like an hour long, and we take one album. We both do a deep listen and then come back the next week with our own individual reviews of it. So it's like Cranked and Ranked, but it's more of a hobby thing for the other guy that I'm talking to, because we're just friends from college, and we got back in touch. And he's recently, your channel actually really reignited his love for music, which he'd kind of fallen out of love with. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, he commented. His name is Dan Matthews. He's commented on a couple of your. Yeah. So he's the guy I'm doing this thing with. But I copied and pasted my notes from that episode over to this one. I won't go too in depth, but yeah, I just thought I've already got these notes down. I can pretty much transfer them over.
Yeah.
Land of Sunshine. This. It explodes to life with this texture that only Faith No More can create authentically. Massive step up in creativity right off the bat. Patton's using a shit ton of different voices, all the way from like, here's how to order to like that very close operatic style. And you're thinking, is this even the same guy?
When I first got this album, that was my first thought was, I had to go back to the notes because I got this one also first on cassette, and I had to go and look and be like, no, it's still Mike Patton. That guy, he's really grown as a vocalist. Like, because I just remember being totally blown away by all the different things that he does on this album.
Yeah, completely. And, you've still got, Roddy's haunting keys over the syncopated, funky metal thing going on. Not that Faith No More is funk metal, but there are elements of funk in their rhythms. And then you get Caffeine.
It's important to point out before you move on, though, the lyrics to Land of Sunshine, a lot of them are taken from a Scientology quiz that I actually took.
Personality test.
A personality test. Because I remember being with some friends of mine on this little strip by the local college in Austin, and we're record shopping and stuff. And there's a Scientology like center there, and we went by and they invited us in and say, hey, if you come take this quiz, we'll give you free food. And we were like, oh shit, okay. And so we went in and took it, and it was all this. It was this weird test where they asked several questions in different ways. Like, it was a lot of questions, but you would be like, I think I already answered this question. And I just remember a couple of the things that he says, especially do you often sing or whistle just for fun? Like, that is one of the questions from that personality test. So when I first, I remember like this was post Angel Dust. So I remember going down there and being like, they took fucking Faith No More lyrics and made them into a test. But I'm assuming it already existed before that. But that's my little story.
The moment religion starts around Faith No More, I'm becoming like a priest or something. Like this, what is it like? Jim Martin from the Faith No More Spirituality Institute or something from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
What a shithead!
Yeah. Station.
Yeah, that's still my favorite. Like out of like, cameos in a movie, just his delivery of what a shithead. It's just so good.
It's great too.
That's Jim Martin, by the way, we're talking about. Jim Martin has a cameo in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Such a good movie. If you haven't seen Excellent Adventure and or Bogus Journey is the one with Jim Martin in it. But goddamn, what a cameo to have!
Yeah, it's pretty great. Yeah. And I just on a side note, I'm very excited for Bill and Ted Face the Music. I am absolutely 100% ready for that movie. So, but that's beside the point. We're not going to unfortunately, probably won't have any Faith No More involved with that movie.
Wouldn't it be great though? It'd be amazing. Oh, like Jim Martin is just in the movie. He's not even in Faith No More.
But if you've seen pictures of Jim Martin now, you won't even know he's in it because he doesn't have the beard and the hair and the glasses. Like he just looks like a regular old dude now. He just, you wouldn't even know.
Pumpkin farmer.
Yeah.
But he has had a fascinating life. Let's just say right off the bat before I continue, Jim Martin, one of the genuinely most interesting people I have seen. He was in one of my favorite bands, and when he left, he did some other projects, and then did a complete left turn and became a competitive pumpkin farmer.
Yeah.
He always did have that kind of like American farmer vibe in him.
Yeah.
But, competitive pumpkins.
But he's also really great friends with the Metallica guys and people like that. Like he seems like a guy that even though he's not active in the music scene, I think he's still very good friends with a lot of those people. So I think he's still in the scene in some way.
Oh, for sure. And I think from an image standpoint, he is pretty iconic to the early run of Faith No More.
Yeah. And if just in case, for those of you who might be a bit lost, the album we're talking about is the last album that has this guy we're talking about on guitar, Jim Martin. And so, yeah, as we just spoke about, he did a few musical things after that, but for the most part, he just went and started living his life.
Yeah, and similar to how Roddy wasn't really present for the King for a Day sessions as much, Jim was facing similar problems. His dad had recently died, and he was kind of taking over his dad's business a little bit on the side, and he was just struggling. And he wasn't really feeling the music on this album either. He wanted it to be a little bit more guitar driven, when in actual fact it became a little bit more pattern led. And so
yeah. And there's a really interesting on YouTube somewhere. There's like an hour long or plus compilation of different interviews from while they were recording Angel Dust.
Oh yeah, it's a 4-hour
it's very
MTV
long.
B-roll thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the interviews with Jim, you can tell like he's a good-natured individual, but you can tell he's kind of like, I don't know.
He's checked out.
Yeah, he's like it's almost like he's like, I don't know my place in this anymore. Am I even important to this music anymore?
Yeah, which I think is kind of sad. Is sad really, because this is my favorite. He's my favorite all-time member of Faith No More, but this is my favorite album from Faith No More.
His sound is integral to the Faith No More sound. I have no problem. As much as I enjoy every Faith No More album, in my opinion, it was never as good after this album, and I think he is a big reason why I don't like all the albums after as much.
Yeah, I'd say, especially because we're metal guys, we notice the guitar tone difference. Especially.
Yeah, even when it's just atmospheric, even when he's just playing some simple chords underneath it, the tone of it just adds that element of the Faith No More sound that if you I can understand if you came on board with Faith No More later, it doesn't really matter. But overall, especially from somebody like me that got into them on The Real Thing, it's just a character that I'm just like, this is just a part of it. I don't know. I don't like it without it.
Yeah, I would agree. It's kind of like. Yeah, it's just like a missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, so it's like me. So it's like you can clearly make out what the puzzle is. Let's do the pizza analogy. it's like getting a large pizza and half of the pieces not half the pieces, a fourth of the pieces are now gone, but it's still a good pizza and you're going to eat it anyway.
Yeah. We're gonna have to break out the pizza analogy in every episode now.
I'm just gonna change the cover image for for this podcast to be a pizza with us over it, and people are gonna come to it and be like, "I thought this was gonna be about pizza, and it's all about metal." I mean, don't they go hand in hand, kinda?
They do. I feel like pop punk tried to hijack it, but we've reclaimed it. The thrash dudes really reclaimed the pizza.
They really did. Pizza and beer belongs to metal for sure.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And so, which leads me
Caffeine.
Into Caffeine.
Track 2.
Track 2, people. Beginning with like kind of a soundbite of dogs barking. Already an odd choice, but it works. It ups the aggression. It's much more metal, but it's still not like your straight ahead metal song.
No, it's pretty odd
for its time. And there's a lot of time changes in there, and especially that "I'm buying you" section where it just like just it's so cool. And it's moments like that really does make me wonder, how is Jim not loving this shit? Because this is so heavy.
I think this song probably wasn't one of the ones. I think it was a lot of the other ones where it's a lot more atmospheric with the keys and stuff.
Yeah. It's like I say, it's a kick-ass, really good, great song. It would be very difficult for me to give, any of the tracks on this album anything lower than a 9 out of 10. This album really is 10 out of 10 for me all the way through. But goddamn, what a standout track! This one in particular. And then, here we go. This is a segment I would like to call Eddie's Backstory Corner.
All right.
Okay, so anyone who played GTA San Andreas back in the day had Midlife Crisis fucking cranked. I know I did, because this track rules. This was my introduction to Faith No More, so Angel Dust's weirdness didn't really stick out to me when I first got into them, because I just knew what Midlife Crisis sounded like, so I never really had the surprise of hearing, The Real Thing after Introduce Yourself, and then, Angel Dust after The Real Thing. The only thing that really stood out to me as different at the time was anything after Angel Dust. The first 4 albums at the time to me just all sounded pretty cohesive, and, this is Faith No More. This is what Faith No More sounds like. Badass, unique. I kind of lumped them in with grunge, even though they're not, but there's like a crossover in the early 90s between that alt metal thing and the grunge thing. They would kind of tour together and stuff.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it just started falling under the alternative category. Like, even if you were heavier alternative or lighter alternative, you could easily, find somebody playing Faith No More followed by REM. It seemed like they went together in some sort of odd way.
And which is why I think, the late 80s and early 90s are an extremely interesting time for music, because so much interesting stuff was going on like that, like you say. And
yeah,
it's a weird world to think about. And, I never experienced it firsthand, but in a way, the way Rockstar Games made GTA San Andreas, I feel like they created the most accurate, I know there's a lot of shooting and killing in the game, which isn't, applicable to daily life, but they created an atmosphere that feels like an early 90s simulation.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
it's pretty bang on.
If I remember right, in the early 90s, that's when over in America there was a huge thing about road rage shootings. Like you would hear stories of people being pissed off on the highway and shooting at people. And whether or not they were blown out of proportion or not, which they probably were, knowing the news, but it was still one of those things where that's a thing that was on your mind. Like, holy shit. It was almost like a school shooting kind of thing. Like, am I going to get shot at because I accidentally merge the wrong way in traffic or something?
It's such a wild thing to think about, because, especially since I'm from the UK, shootings are much less common over here. We do get them, but they're more likely a, 2 every year kind of occurrence, rather than the much more sadly frequent number that happens over in the US.
Yeah, no, it's the early 90s here. That is right smack in the middle of the boom of gang culture, like the Bloods and the Crips and shit like that. Like that's what
San Andreas is based on.
When you really started to see and hear all of the stories about that stuff, and so yeah, I mean, really that seems to fit right in. Like, it should be a game about violence in the inner city, because that's the thing that you would see on the news a whole lot. So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, I just think, even down to a vibe, most of the game is based on locations in California and a little bit of Nevada as well. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the atmosphere they created, the soundtrack is integral, because it completely takes you to a place, and because there's nothing later than 1992 on it, it captures that era perfectly.
Did they ever put out a soundtrack for that, like with all the songs on it?
Yeah. I think there's two versions. There's a box set of like the entire collection of radio stations, and then there's like a highlights album. But you can find playlists on Spotify of all of the tracks.
I'd be
there.
interested to hear like all the stuff they included on that.
I think you would be very impressed with San Andreas' soundtrack because it's got the like West Coast hip hop station, which is like the kind of gangster rap stuff, and then you've got like the more old school 80s hip hop station, but there's also a classic rock station, a grunge alt metal station, and then there's other stuff on there as well, like kind of a funk station, a country station, which is funny. There's a lot of countryside in the interim of the cities as well. And I know I'm doing my kind of San Andreas circle jerk like I do every episode, but it's a very important thing to what it gave me a lot of music that has stayed with me, and it's an important window for me.
We've spoke about it before in an earlier episode where it's like that video games, in the modern era are just as important as MTV was to all of us that are my age. So it's how you discover things, and so I don't think that you can really make light of it because it's a video game. I think it's just as important. However you discover music, it's good.
Oh, for sure. And just for a little bit of fun, I've got the track list here. I just want to get your initial reaction to the alt metal and and alternative kind of station. Okay, so we've got Unsung by Helmet.
Oh my God, that is a good start right there.
Funnily enough, it's got like you say, it's got all facets of the alternative scene. So you've got Unsung by Helmet, Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode,
cool.
Midlife Crisis by Faith No More, Mother by Danzig, Cult of Personality by Living Colour. Moving On Up by Primal Scream, Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses, Pretend We're Dead, L7, Rusty Cage by Soundgarden, Killing in the Name, Being Caught Stealing, Fool's Gold, Them Bones, and Plush.
Wow, yeah, that's that takes you back to that is easily 92 because all of those things were around. Being either new or still being played in 1992. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like they captured a time capsule perfectly in something that was released 12 years later. But yeah, for sure. Cool. And now that I've finally done my little tangent, let's get back into Angel Dust.
Midlife Crisis.
Midlife Crisis, what can I say? Fantastic song.
Perfect fucking song. Perfect song.
Extremely well put together. All of the vocal performances, even stuff down to like the EBO on the guitar.
And then you got the really great Beastie Boys, whatever you call it, the sample in the middle.
Yeah, the Car Thief, is it?
Yeah. Like that is. There's so many great things about this track.
I would imagine for you as well at the time, being a hip hop fan, did you recognize that sample?
No, because at that point, Paul's Boutique was an album that didn't break big in America. And so I was already a huge fan of the Beastie Boys, but I remember for some reason the Paul's Boutique went really under the radar and I didn't really hear anything from it. And then Check Your Head came out and then that was me going, oh, this is fucking rad. We should do a Beastie Boys one of these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't know Paul's Boutique well enough to actually get to hear that part of it. But later on down the line, I would hear that part and go, oh, it's cool. They took that little bit from that song.
Definitely. Yeah. There's just so many cool little Easter eggs to discover in this song. Even the Simon and Garfunkel Cecilia sample at the start of the drum beat.
Yeah.
In there underneath Borden's kind of tribal style of drumming. And there's a part in the chorus as well that really gives me goosebumps because it changes from major to minor. You know, it starts off with the "You're perfect, yes, it's true. Da, well, without me, only you," and that I think the melody of his voice hits the minor third of the minor chord used there or something. I remember it explained in a Podcast Croissant episode. Shout out Podcast Croissant. And they do a really good breakdown of Midlife Crisis too. But god damn, that chorus is it. There's a reason this is a defining moment for this band. It's iconic.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Faith No More songs, but also one of my favorite just songs in general. Like it's in my top 10 for sure of songs ever written. It's just that good.
Hell yeah. Okay, so let's move it on over to RV. RV approaches Mr. Bungle levels of weird. You know, after hitting us with 3 very different variations on a alt metal kind of style, they hit us right in the ears with this white trash character monologue over the top of this like tripped out country western feel, and it's the first song on the album where you think, okay, what? Like, you know, that kind of feel. Yeah, at that point you're like, I knew these guys were weird, but okay, what's going on here?
This song always makes me feel like Mike Patton already had the vocal idea ready to go. Like he just started doing this impression and then the guy started making appropriate music underneath it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sorry, I had a brain fart there. Yeah, while this is extremely strange and different, it still manages to feel consistent with the album's vibe. You know, it doesn't like, it stands out, but it doesn't take away anything. I feel like it just adds to the what the fuck side to this album that really makes it such an interesting listen. But yeah, like I say, it really opens up in that bridge section. Throw a belt over the shower curtain rod, you know, and swing. It's just all of those different vocal styles Patton employs on this record really shows how much he's grown in such a short span of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, RV. What else can I say?
I'll strange. Just tell him what my daddy told me. You ain't never gonna amount to nothing.
That's gonna sound so fucking cool on the podcast when it's edited. That was ace. Cool. So now we've got Smaller and Smaller. I've heard this referred to as death metal Pink Floyd. And it makes sense.
It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. Any weird description would probably work.
Yeah, it's kind of this like Arabian desert journey vibe. It's another chunk of this album that's so hard to describe, but it's somehow extremely different, yet extremely makes sense in the context of this album. Because none of these songs, I hear one of these songs and I think, that's an Angel Dust track. But to an outsider looking in, you wouldn't know that, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, all of these different feels that they're dropping on us with these songs, it's just absolutely immense. And then, you know, this song really gives me like the stood at the edge of an abyss kind of vibe when that solo really opens up. And Jim Martin doesn't really shred on this album, but the leads he plays, I mean, you know, he has a couple solos here and there, but the leads he plays are more textural than they are to show off.
Agreed.
And, you know, very often in this album, I find myself almost like looking in pure awe at it, just thinking, shit, this is amazing. And all of the... I'm still discovering samples that I never realized were even there on this album. Like,
there's a lot to unpack from these songs.
There really is. Like, and I think as well, strangely, this is the only album where they really did a lot of sampling.
I think you're right.
Before and since, there's not really any sampling on. You get the odd sound bite on The Real Thing, but there's no sampling on King for a Day. And then, obviously, Everything's Ruined. Another example of this album's wildly diverse yet mind-blowing consistent quality and style.
And another pretty perfect song in my opinion.
Those drums, bass, and keyboard, the core of Faith No More just locked in, and the vocals and keys, they add so much atmosphere and character to an already grooving sound, and it's almost like the guitar and vocals are a very tasty icing on the cake. Whereas, Patton's distinctively intriguing lyrics as well, coupled with Jim Martin's thrashy parts, it's just such a interesting, like, it shouldn't be as palatable as it is, to me at least.
Yeah.
Like,
it's one of those things I think on paper you would think it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But it easily does. Definitely.
I would say from an extremity point of view, Malpractice still scares the shit out of me. It's a Patton song. You can tell it's a Patton song because it's so batshit insane. It's the most extreme and progressive of the album's tracks.
It does sound like something out of a horror movie at times, even with the weird, like, the string section thing going on in the middle of the song.
Yeah, and the bells
it sounds like something
from
Psycho or something.
It really does.
Yeah.
Those bells and the strings, good God. And, the darkest part to me is that little lullaby part in the middle that kind of lulls you into this false sense of security.
Yeah, it's fucking spooky as hell.
Yeah. And it's like, am I okay? Am I summoning something by listening to this song? I'll never forget the first time I heard it. My 14-year-old face by the end of it was like this. What? I'll allow the listener to make up their mind on what face that was, but just make this noise.
Yeah, everybody at home, do your own face.
But yeah, it's kind of this Scooby-Doo on crack kind of face. But yeah. And then you get Kindergarten, which does a very kind job of chilling you out after such a thrill ride. And
it does seem like, if you were watching a horror movie after some really big tense moment, the next scene where you're kind of starting from scratch again, like Kindergarten has that feel.
Yeah.
Of, all right, we're back down here again. Now where are we gonna go?
Yeah. It definitely brings this song. Now, I said this in my other podcast. I described this song as aggressively chill. Because it's still got the guitar in there. It's still moving ahead, but it doesn't have this like driving ahead, punching forward kind of feel. It kind of everything's laid back. Everything's loud but not too loud, and especially with that bass solo and the keys in the middle and the way they kind of groove along together, is one of the album's prettiest moments. And I feel like this song is, to me, one of the most underrated Faith No More songs.
Yeah.
Because it's just got such a good soundscape. And, Patton's, scatting sound buried slightly in the mix just creates this otherworldly kind of vibe. I love this song, and whenever it comes on, I am immediately in a good mood. It has that kind of reassuring feel to it that just puts me in a good place. Personally, I really like.
It's a good example of the sort of effortless moods that they can create with a song, where there's there's a lot more going on in it than you first realize. So yeah.
Definitely. And on the flip side, you've got the upbeat follow-up with Be Aggressive, which, dare I say, is an absolute tune. It starts all spooky with this Hammond organ thing. No, sorry, this church organ thing, and then it goes into this Hammond organ funk stuff. And I love the fact as well that Mike Patton wasn't afraid to sing a song about oral sex written by the band's gay keyboardist. It's such a great premise of a song, and it's a nice upbeat change again to the more chilled out Kindergarten. And I feel like the running order of this album is so perfect because each song hits you with exactly the right mood you need after finishing the previous track.
Yeah. And also once you do, discover that the song is about male on male or oral sex, it makes it even more appropriate that the chorus has the female cheerleaders chanting "Be aggressive." it's just so perfectly done that it's another one of those things where I don't think I would have come up with that idea, but I'm glad that they did because it's just absolutely perfect in that song.
Yeah. And then not finally. I mean finally. I mean finally from a single point of view. The final single that we got from this album, A Small Victory, it marries this concoction of styles that shouldn't make sense but totally does. With its metal meets dance music and Eastern melodies attitude, kind of smashes these boundaries and gives us a world of sounds that never ceases to offer something new for the listener to enjoy and really sink their teeth into, especially in that industrial metal part with all of the cash machines and all of the different stuff going on that you don't notice while you're listening to it. But if you give it a deep listen, you hear all of these sounds and you think, why did they put this here? But it adds to the vibe.
It's also a good example of Mike Patton doing something that's not necessarily expected, because the verses are very melodic, and then you get to the chorus and it's no, it's very syncopated and rhythmic, and it's not a poppy and catchy chorus when you're just thinking about what it is, but it is easily something that just gets stuck in your head, even though it's not what you would necessarily expect for that part of that song.
Yeah, and I think, a good way of describing this album is kind of bipolar, because it does switch between major and minor keys, and it can't quite make up its mind at times whether or not it wants to be happy or dark. And I personally love that about this album. It has its dark moments, but it makes me feel good at the same time.
Honestly, even the upbeat moments in this album always feel like they're under a large cloud to me. That's one reason that I really do think that, funny enough, this album to me has more in common with Introduce Yourself than it does The Real Thing, because Introduce Yourself has a lot of dark, vibey kind of things. And Angel Dust also has that sort of thing where they create these moods that even in something that's energetic and upbeat, it still has like a weird overtone of something's not necessarily right here,
Yeah, and you could even boil that down to the artwork choice, because on the front cover you've got this, beautiful egret bird. Is that the right way to say it? Egret?
I think it's egret over here, but who knows who's right.
I have no idea. For ages, I just thought, that's a swan or a pelican or whatever the fucking bird that is. It's the angel dust bird, And
exactly.
But on the back cover, that you don't see on things like Spotify and that, you've actually got meat on a hook. It's kind of like
a cow's head.
Yeah, cow's head, and it's like kind of this slaughterhouse abattoir kind of vibe, and that basically sums up this album. Gory stuff with a pretty veneer kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of these maniacal, insane moments wrapped up in a really sophisticated sound. And I feel like the keys have a lot to answer for on that front, because they create this like kind of, I don't want to say like, you know, above it kind of feel, but it does make the album sound more sophisticated than perhaps it would with the keys absent.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Yeah, which brings me to a very Roddy heavy song with Crack Hitler, you know, which plays with the listener's ears a bit more. You know, it's got an unsettling mix of funk and dark orchestral movie score overtones.
Yeah.
And, you know, Patton's fuzzy ham radio kind of delivery thing going on here. Really, you know, the only part that's really metal is that, like, "Dah, hey, hey,
Oh,
hey,"
the middle
part.
section, yeah.
But, you know, the rest of it, considering how dark it is, you know, that's the only real chuggy metal bit. But, yeah, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say that the Jim Martin's like wah guitar part in the verses, that's almost, to me, that seems like the closest he ever got to doing anything like funk guitar.
Yeah.
Because I guess there's some wah on "Be Aggressive" also, but yeah, it's real prominent because it's real rhythmic in what he's playing.
Yeah.
On Crack Hitler.
Crack Hitler always makes me think of Shaft. Just that, like,
Yeah,
Shaft. That would be brilliant. You know, just a mashup of that.
yeah,
You're damn right. But yeah, it for a while this was my least favorite song on the album, but it grew on me. It was definitely the biggest grower track on the album. But this, of all of the songs on this album, it feels like the most soundtrack kind of song.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's got this like creepy glockenspiel part at the end as well, with the na 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 Patton's falsetto thing on that, and it's just all of the parts on this album are just so well placed and so well put together, but you wouldn't think in a traditional song to just throw something like that in there, but it totally works.
Yeah.
And then you can tell my voice is starting to go. I'm getting a little
Shit. It's over 2 hours now talking about 3 albums.
Wow. Holy shit.
I guess technically 4, but yeah.
We'll go with 4. That seems fair.
No, one, two. Yeah, I think we mentioned 4 here. Anyway.
Yeah. So I've got Jizzlobber, brought to the band by guitarist Jim Martin, the heaviest, in my opinion, song on the record. From a guitar groove standpoint, I would say Malpractice is the most extreme. This is the heaviest, I would say.
I don't know. I really do think that the chorus, if you can call it a chorus, with the and then Mike Patton's like chaotic screaming over it, like that seems like the heaviest moment on any Faith No More song to me. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think it gets heavier than that, and not just in the sound, you know, of what's being played, but the sonics of it all. Like everything, just it's very dark and very heavy.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think this is, you know, you've even got that kind of you've got the Psycho thing in there, like ding 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 ding.
Yeah,
going through it, and it just like you say, it's got this really dark and nasty sound to it. This one, and those huge chords in there as well. And it encompasses all facets of the band's sound, but it doesn't do it in the Faith No More like it does it in a straight ahead, I'm going to crush you to death with my guitar approach.
Yeah.
You know, and something that really stands out to me as well is that beautiful, evil sounding organ outro at the end of this song. If I ever wanted to be like a professional wrestler or some shit and following the footsteps of like the Undertaker, I would go into the ring to that in the background, because like it's so good.
Yeah. It does, like this whole section of the album, Crack Hitler into Jizzlobber, and then the ending of Jizzlobber. It really does like just to continue making horror film analogies. It's like the climax of the horror things where things start to get a little bit heavy, and then finally it's like the final fuck your world up thing happening.
Yeah.
And then the organ part at the end of the song, it's almost like congratulations, you made it through. It has a very sort of like, you're now on the other side. You made it out. And then that brings us to what I guess you would call the denouement in a movie, which is the next tune you're going to get to.
Yep. Now this album finishes on, apart from the original pressing, this album finishes up on 2 covers. The first is...
Nope. Finishes up on 1 on the original version.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I meant apart from the original version.
Gotcha.
There's 2 covers, and they're perfectly chosen, in my opinion. You've got Midnight Cowboy, feels like the end credits sequence. It's an instrumental track, and it's taken from, obviously, the movie Midnight Cowboy, and it's this...
It does give the album a cinematic closing kind of feel.
It does, and I feel like Easy is like... This version of Easy, the more stripped back version without all of like the string parts and stuff, it kind of feels like a light-hearted, everything's going to be okay,
I almost shy away from even talking about it now because to me, like it's from that EP that came out a little bit later. It wasn't on Angel Dust. And so Midnight Cowboy is the ending of the movie to me. Like Easy is just like a deleted scene, I guess you watch on the DVD or something like that.
I suppose I've never been without Easy on the album. Me being a younger lad, so I've never listened to this album without Easy, and it's become such a integral part of the listening experience for me because Angel Dust is such a roller coaster that you kind of need a cool down period. And while Midnight Cowboy is kind of like an end credit sequence, it feels like that's preparing me to go into Easy, and then Easy is just like this, I'm gonna chill out, I'm gonna vibe for about 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna go about the rest of my day feeling completely fulfilled and completely chilled out once more, because I have battered my ears with this absolutely amazing work of art, but I need a good 5 minutes to process everything that's happened. And Easy is a highlight for me at the end, really, because it's become my kind of, come down. So it's like,
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, it's a cover of the Commodores song "Easy," which is sung by Mr. Lionel Richie. Which is it's a great cover, but like in just because of the history of the band and my experience with them, I didn't hear this until a year or 2 later, I think, and so it's always weird to include it here, but you do have a good point. Like it does like the vinyl version that I have has Easy on the end of it because I can't afford to get a fucking 1992 pressing of this album. That's not a thing I can afford.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna quickly give my little 2 cents on the album so we can wrap it up here because we've gone over the 2-hour mark talking about so few albums.
Shit. Totally.
So Angel Dust to me, it's a very important album, and clearly it's my favorite Faith No More album because it's here at number 1. But it's one of those things where it was a highly anticipated album because I was so in love with The Real Thing and obsessed with Faith No More, and they were one of my favorite bands at the time. And when this album came out, there was really no expectation as to what to expect because The Real Thing was the kind of album where you kind of felt that this band could go in several directions and you'd probably be kind of cool with it. But I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, I think the video for Midlife Crisis premiered before the album came out. So I think I'd already heard that. And then, I mean, this is one of those things where I even remember where I went. Like, I went to Tower Records and bought this on cassette, and I think it was the beginning of the summer or something like that. But I just remember it being something that all of a sudden was the only thing I wanted to listen to, because this album is a level beyond another level. Like, it just expands on the Faith No More sound so much that it almost renders it anything before it obsolete. Like, it's just like, we've now moved so much forward, you know, and it's one of those albums, like I talked about, when we talked about Nirvana, and I was talking about In Utero. Just like In Utero, Angel Dust is an album that sort of set the bar for what I expect from great bands. Like, I don't expect a band to give me the same thing twice, and I want to be challenged. I want to have my mind opened up a little bit by something, and I just want it to be an interesting listen. And Angel Dust is probably the best example of that kind of album. And I already said a lot of these things before, but it is, like you said, there's a lot of different moods on this album, but they all seem to sort of fit together in a very weird kind of way, and they're all equally engaging. Like, there's not a dull moment on this album anywhere. It's pretty much just a masterpiece, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's in my top 10, maybe my top 5. I don't even remember the last time I did a top 10. It was somewhere in there. And it's just got so many memorable songs, which we broke down, all of them there. And it's an interesting album in hindsight, because it's one of those albums that would go on to influence a ton of different bands, who all included people that probably didn't like it when it came out. It's one of those albums that I don't remember friends of mine liking this album. I loved it.
Yeah.
And especially in America, it was an album that didn't get the respect it deserved until much later. And now it's the album that you name drop if you want to say you're into interesting rock music, you know?
Yeah.
Which is fine. However you come around to it, it's great. And we already talked about Jim Martin. Jim Martin's sound is very important. And I know that, you know, he had things going on in his life, and he wasn't happy with his role in the band at this point and the music they were making. But if for some reason he could ever hear us talking about him, I would want him to know that his presence on the album is perfect. And he managed to give every song exactly what it needed, even if it wasn't necessarily what he wanted. And like I said before, I think Faith No More was never the same after this album.
Yeah.
And that being said, as we've talked about a lot, you know, the albums that came after this are they're really great albums. And I continue to consider myself a Faith No More fan, but this is the peak. This is the high point.
Yeah.
For Faith No More. And that's really all I have to add. We've kind of discussed everything else. It is just one of those albums that never gets old. It will live with me forever. And I'm with you. I hate talking about Desert Island albums, because I'm always like, can't we just narrow it down to maybe like 50? Like,
yeah.
do we have to say one? And so, it's one of those things where if there was a Desert Island, 50, it would be in the group, because it's a fascinating and exhilarating listen every single time, and that's why it's both of our number ones, another joint number one from Cranked and Ranked.
That could be a fun episode. Our Desert Island discs.
I mean, we could totally do that. We could do I want to at least do 10. So because it's hard. It would be hard. It was hard to do 5 albums from 1 year.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah. You have anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Not really. Like you say, Faith No More don't have a bad album. They've just got good albums and amazing albums. So,
Yeah.
you know, it really is. They are something else. There's nobody sounds like them. They're so original. You know, I can't think of a single band that sounds like them authentically.
Yeah.
They really are just they're I would hazard a guess they're probably they're at least one of the most unique bands of all time.
And also, I think that they're the kind of band that you may feel the same way. So you meet somebody randomly on the street or wherever you are, and they tell you, I love Metallica. Metallica is the kind of band where you're just like, oh, right on, cool, I love them too. But if somebody tells you I love Faith No More,
Yeah.
you're almost like, brother. Like
Yeah,
you, like
yeah.
it's like you found each other, because it's one of those bands that they can be divisive, and they are at times an acquired taste, but it's almost like you're in a special club, like the people that love this band. You're all kind of like-minded individuals musically. And I also do think that being into Faith No More is a really good indication that you have a realistically wide scope of a music appreciation.
Yes.
Like you're somebody that I think that you're knowledgeable if you're into Faith No More.
Yeah, I would say so too. You know, they just really are such an all-encompassing thing while having such a unique style, you know. No one album sounds the same, and that is fascinating to me, because, you know, you've got your bands like Metallica that, you know, did evolve, but, and I know, you know, the guitar tones would change, but you could listen to like a marathon of Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, and you'd be like, yeah, these are thrash records. You don't do that with Faith No More, you know?
Yeah, there's a progression, but it's a very gradual progression. It's not a leap,
Yeah.
you know, from one to the other. So yeah, I totally agree.
Whereas when Faith No More drops a new album, you're like, what is this? I love it, but what the fuck? You know?
Yeah.
It's one of those like juxtaposed feelings of like, this shouldn't work, but it does, and it does
Yeah.
it brilliantly.
And as we talked about, or I talked about in the last episode, that's the feeling that I didn't get from their most recent album.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where if they do decide to make another album, I really hope that they throw us for a loop. I hope that it's something that we're not expecting, that maybe at first we don't even really like.
Yeah.
But it grows and becomes something that you totally understand, and I don't know. If any band can do it this late in the game, I think that it's them. So we'll see.
This is where they do a trap song with like a dubstep bass drum.
I would not. I'd be absolutely fine with that.
Yeah, it'd be so funny.
There's literally. I don't know if you heard it. A little quick side note: the thrash band Mordred. It's like a funky thrash band.
Yeah.
They released a new EP, and the second track is a full-on trap song. It's not metal at all.
What?
And people are all like, "Why the fuck would they do this?" I'm like, because they're fucking weird. That's what they've always done. Whatever the fuck they want,
Dude.
And so
I have got Spotify open and I am typing it in as we speak.
Mordred. Just listen to Mordred. Listen to every Mordred album. So
I cannot wait to hear this. I'll listen to it after the podcast, but goddamn, that sounds amazing.
yeah. So anyway, before we run way over talking about other shit, thank you all for joining us for our love fest for Faith No More. Hopefully we didn't go on too long. Some of you, I think, enjoy the lengthy ones. So this is an example of how we can literally just talk about a few albums and go on for 2.5 hours. So thank you for listening once again, and we'll be back next week with the next. I think we're going to do another band, but no hints here, folks. We're going to keep things going in a direction where maybe you don't quite know where we're going to go. We're not going to go to to any country music or anything, but but we're gonna keep
I was going to
things
say we do
interesting.
Willie Nelson.
Oh God. Okay. On that note, let's wrap this up. Thanks for listening to Cranked and Ranked, and we will see you all again next time. Take us out, Eddie.
Later, dude.